How do you install this shower bar from Mira? Stick around, I'll take you through it step by step, including some top tips to make sure that your installation is absolutely rock solid and will not go anywhere.
Just remove the cover from the old shower holder, which is pretty loose as you can see. It looks like that's a Phillips. Someone's tried to do it with a posi because it's all nice and rounded there. Subtle difference between Phillips and posi. There's a little extra bit of grip on the posi. This has just got two simple screws. I'm willing to bet that they've screwed this into rule plugs, which is a classic mistake when installing almost anything that involves drilling into walls. Almost all walls, certainly in the UK, have plasterboard and a bit of air, bit of an air gap, and then brick. Only time you'd ever want to use a rule plug is if you've got a brick which has been properly plastered over, so just literally plaster and brick, no air gap in between. So most plasterers these days, when they want to get a nice smooth finish nice and quickly on the wall, what they'll do is they will get a sheet of plasterboard and they will do what's called dot and dab. So they'll get a huge bucket of adhesive mixed up, slap it all over the wall, stick the plasterboard on it, and what you end up with is a very soft piece of plasterboard and then a bit of an air gap or a bit of adhesive, and then brickwork, which means when you try and screw anything into it, because the plasterboard is soft, it just falls out. And if you try and put a rule plug into plasterboard, it won't last very long. You need what's called a plasterboard fixing. But however, in a bathroom, it's even more complex, because quite often in the bathroom you get what's called moisture resistant plasterboard, which is a slightly improved version of plasterboard specifically for bathrooms, but it really shouldn't be used. Really what you should use in a bathroom is tile board, which is far better structurally and moisture resistance wise, and what often gets used in place of both of those is cement board, which is kind of halfway house between the two. But either way, whenever you're trying to mount something in a bathroom, really and truly, unless you can get through the tile to the plasterboard without damaging the plasterboard, the only way to reliably do it is to use resin. But most people can't be bothered to do that, which is why these things get so loose, they get abused, and of course they can't take the abuse because they haven't got proper fixing, so they fall out. It's not horrendous using these in tile, because there is a bit of expansion of the plastic as you screw the screw in. It does tend to grip the tile a little bit, but it's not good and robust enough for something that's going to receive a lot of abuse like a shower holder. So I'm going to attempt to remove those two there. Probably going to reuse that top hole there, and then we're going to put a new hole in down here to mount the shower bar there. So let's crack on and get along those pliers out and get those rule plugs out. Okay, so in the shower bar box, it's really simple. You just get a shower bar, obviously, and a box of fixings and some instructions. You also get a soap dish. You've got to be careful with how you install the soap dish, because it's quite easy to get that wrong. So there's the bar, soap dish, and fixings. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to want to throw away from here is the roll plugs. Won't be using those unless your shower is going onto a brick wall. You will not need those. You're going to need these to mount the silver end caps there. We're going to be using a proper hex key to do these grub screws up, and we won't be using roll plugs, so we won't be using these screws either. Get rid of them, get rid of that crappy hex key. And they set these to mount posts at arbitrary levels, roughly the right sort of size. And obviously you've got to be mindful that the shower head might fit into that size, or it might fit into that size. It's a double size, which is quite nice, and you can reverse it and so on, which I'll show you at the end of the video. So that will be our highest. And that's, I mean, I'm about 5'11", so that would allow for something that's 6 foot. Really be nice to get it up to there, really. That'll give us a nice adjustment. I think that's what I'm going to do actually. I'm going to mount it a bit higher than both of those. So we'll go with, no, that'd be too high, but I think that would be quite a good height there, because then that allows you to go right down to, that's chest height on me, so it's going to be about as low as you'd want to go for a child probably. So what we're going to do is use a 12mm tile drill to drill that hole for the top mount there. Okay, put down a fairly high torque on the drill driver, get the drill set in, get some PPE. We do get this drill guide which comes along with it, which is, to be honest, a gimmick. It doesn't really help you because your drill vibrates so much that this jiggles everywhere, even with the suction pad used. It's a lovely idea, it doesn't work in practice, so it's not necessary. However, if you've got a tile drill with a sharp pointy end, be prepared for a long wait and a long stand, because that will take forever to go through tiles. Use these diamond tip bits instead. So yeah, you are going to want to use PPE for this. You're going to want something over your eyes because you can get bits of tiles flying everywhere. You're definitely going to use gloves. just in case you slip, and you also will probably want to use earplugs because the noise can be quite intense. The way these work is you just start drilling at a bit of an angle, get a bit of a grip, and then you can move into where you actually want the hole to be. So you always start at a bit of an angle. It will try and wander over, so it's a good idea to get your elbows firmly in place so they're not wandering, so you've got a nice firm starting point. You can see it's making good progress. Just going to cool this off a bit. Yeah, it's kicking up a lot of dust there. I reckon that's right at the back of the baseboard there. Yeah, that's fine. That's absolutely fine for our threaded rod. So we haven't gone through. If we'd have gone through, it would have been fine. We'd have just needed to put a bit of expanding foam at the back of the hole. At the back, you can quite clearly see the broken plasterboard at the back there, and that's where I've gone back there. Behind that is just simply a void. What I'm going to do in order to fix it is I'm going to put some expanding foam right at the back, just sort of building up behind the sort of the rim, sort of the rim at the back on the plasterboard side. So it kind of builds up and builds up until we have a solid back, and then once we've got a solid back, I can then fill it full of silicone and put a rod in there and do it properly, rather than whoever did this before, who just stuck a raw plug into a ceramic tile, which wasn't very clever, never works, always falls apart, and guess what, this one's fallen apart. Okay, so I've just put a little blast of expanding foam right in the back of that hole there. And it's obviously hard to know how far it's going to reach behind that hole. I wouldn't want it to go all the way to the back of the cavity for sure. You know, I would want it to just sit hopefully just behind this hole on the other side of the plasterboard, just to give it a little bit of rigidity. Clearly it's made some sort of a seal there. I'm just going to let that go off now for an hour or so. And once it's gone off, we can put some resin in this hole, and then we'll get a threaded rod. We'll probably just poke the rod right through the end there of the seal, or poke it into it to seat it and just hold it centrally. But all it needs to do then is really stop the majority of the resin leaking down the back of that hole. Okay, so that's the first hole drilled. Now we just need to mark up for the second hole. And these do adjust, so it hasn't got to be precise, right? We want it to be roughly the height they suggest. It's a good idea, gives you a little bit of play. About there. I'm not going to check for verticalness. That looks, if it's in line with the tiles, it'll look right, and that does look about vertical. And honestly, even if it's slightly out, I'd rather it was in line with the tiles than vertical but not in line with the tiles, because then it was a little wonky. So it doesn't have to be precisely right, because there is a bit of adjustment on those mounts. So it's telling me not to go any further on that, and I think that will do fine. So I haven't gone through the back on either of those, which is great. Next step is going to be to get the resin kit, clean out those holes, get rid of all the loose dust and debris, get some resin in the holes, get some threaded rods cut first before we get the resin in the holes. Make sure that the easy to get on threaded part is pointing this way, because when you cut it, it's quite hard to get a nut on a freshly cut bit of threaded rod. You can modify it afterwards with the tap and die set, but we want to make life easier for ourselves. I'll show you that in a second. So let's get those holes cleaned up and then get the threaded rods cut. Disclaimer, obviously use breathing apparatus. Okay, so I've taken this threaded rod. It's an M6 rod. On reflection, I probably could have gotten away actually with an M4 rod, but it's okay. This will be fine. M6. I've put it in there, and I've just marked it up so that when it goes in the assembly, it's about 3/4 the way protruding, which gives us plenty of room for manoeuvre there. And as you can see, there's a blank end to that hole. It's not going straight through into the cavity behind, so that'll be absolutely fine as it is. So now I've marked that off. I've used a pencil, but to be honest, a Sharpie would be better. Really, I should have that clamped in a vise, but as I'm a bit limited today, I'm going to not use a vise. So I'll get the angle grinder going. And now these angle grinders, if you use the angle grinders, they can very quickly go off in a certain direction. So you've got to be super careful using these. Wait for it to stop spinning, because as I say, they can get out of control quite quickly. Now I'm using gloves here, so it's okay to pick it up, but if I wasn't, for any reason, which would be stupid, but if I wasn't, this would be very hot, so I would not do that. Now I'm just going to use these pliers and just offer it up to the cavity and check we've got the depth about right. Oh, now plenty of room for error in that measurements. Yeah, we're absolutely perfect there. Yeah, about there. So the reason I've gone to the other end of this is that thread's good there, but where you cut it, you have to really clean that up to get a nut on, and I'm trying to save time, so in fact we're going to use this good end. But of course you can use the rest of the rod, it just needs a bit of clean up if you want to. Since this is a simple project, we're not going to need to do that. Okay, we can throw that away now. Get it anymore. There's the other end, and again, it's going to be quite hot from the cutting process. Use a pair of pliers to just offer it up. Yeah, it's pretty far in, but that's fine. There's still got a bit of a gap before it reaches the end of that, so that's fine. So that's the top one. I'm just going to drill a 6.5mm hole in the back of these mounts. Just going to widen it up a little bit on each end to give us a little bit of movement because we need it. So now what I'm going to do is just give those holes a final clean up. I'm going to get a couple of lengths of insulation tape. What this is for is when the resin goes in the hole, once you put the threaded rod into the resin, it will tend to follow gravity. It will tend to go sag down. So we want to just give it a little bit of light support. The resin goes off in about 20 minutes, honestly, so it doesn't need to last for long. It does need to just give it that little bit of resistance. Now the resin, before it mixes, perfectly malleable. Once it mixes, it goes off very quickly. However, if you haven't used the resin for a while, as I discovered yesterday, it's a good idea to squeeze a little bit out first before using it, because the bit that's been sitting here at the end of the tube, that's not going to be too useful. So once you start squeezing, you can see it starts mixing in the nozzle there. These resin kits are great, but I'm just going to give it quite a little bit out the end. So I'm just going to stick a bit of resin in here. Just want it to sit just underneath proud. There we go. Yeah, it's fine, because obviously once you put the threaded rod in, that's going to give you a little bit more volume going into that hole, which will tend to make the resin puff out a little bit. There it is, in the hole, all nicely done. And the top one as well. And we'll put this bottom one in, like so, and like I say, it's going to push that resin out anyway. Top one, again, I'm just being careful to make sure that the cut end goes into the hole, and the fresh end, the non-perturbed end, stays out. And you can see they're tending to sag down. I'm actually going to get a flat bladed screwdriver just to push that excess of resin into the hole if possible. Okay, and obviously we want it as square as humanly possible. There we go. Let me use the tape that I cut earlier. This is where it comes in quite handy, so we can just put it underneath just to give it a bit of support. I've got 5 minutes or so now to just adjust that so we're confident that that's exactly square in both this dimension like this and this dimension like this. And you can see it's coming out a little bit. Ideally I wouldn't want that, but it's not going to matter once we get the mounts on. Okay, hang on, I think that's good. We'll just clean up the excess resin if we can while it's still a little bit malleable. Right, I'll leave that for 20 minutes to go off, and then we'll be good to move on. Okay, so while these threaded rods are just setting in the resin that's going off, I'm just going to get some grout, just fill in those 2 holes of the old mount. Doesn't need to be especially pretty, just needs to hide the fact that there was a hole there. It's fine, that'll do the job. Okay, so I've left the resin to set for a couple of hours now. Get a little bit trimmed off there. Okay, that's taken a bit off of it. I think that'll be a bit more flush now. We should be able to screw the top and bottom shower rail fixings into the threaded rods. So now we just need a nut and a washer on each of them. And you need a deep socket. And that is really the only way to get these on. And what you'll find is that if you're using nylock nuts like I am, which is the more robust solution, you will find that obviously because of the thread cutting into the nylon after a few turns, there's a fair degree of resistance there, and you've just got to not be afraid of it. The resin does set very, very hard indeed, so you can go fairly brutal with it. Let's get the other one mounted. Okay, so now you can get a 4mm hex key ready for the grub screws. But before we do that, we just need to make sure that these are perfectly aligned, because the chances are they will need a small amount of adjustment. Yeah, there's a slight difference there. What we're going to do is make that so that's movable, leave the top one fixed. Sort of 90% of the way there. That's ready to go on now, and then get a little bit of tape. And I'm just going to tape the bar to the mount there so that it can't move too much.
It's going to stay pretty much in the right place. Move it around quickly. And make sure that, yeah, that's fine. And that is on absolutely rock solid. And we should now find that these two grub screws align perfectly with the holes that they're going into. The grub screws, it's the heads that line up with the holes to stop it coming away this way, because that tends to be where the forces are. So now, all we'd have to do is remove the old shower head from the old hose. Now I've very cleverly lost the washers for the new hose, so we're going to have to reuse the old washers, these washers here, which is fine, obviously they can be replaced and so forth, but number one. Good quality stainless steel hose. Okay, I can get in there and get the shower head on. Okay, it's important to note, actually that does fit, but if it didn't, we could easily literally just moves like that, just wants a bit of friction. I can go anywhere you like. Okay, so there are a couple of other bits required to finish this job off. First of all, there is a chrome cap to go at the top of the rail. It comes in this protective packaging. And then there's a soap dish as well. Now they like you to have the hose going through the soap dish. There's an aperture in the soap dish for it, but to be honest with you, the customer in this case has asked for that not to be the case. So put the soap dish on separately, and all you do is you get this insert, you put it in narrow end down, and it engages with the lugs on there. And the whole thing just pushes up into the base of the shower rail like that, and then there's a screw goes in there, and then you just tighten the screw up. Okay, and that is how you install a Mira Nectar shower rail in your shower. Hope that helps. Do please leave a comment below if you've got any questions or any constructive feedback. Constructive feedback respectfully delivered is a gift. I truly believe that, and I'm very, very grateful for all of your comments. Also, please consider subscribing. I will be sure to upload more videos, and be sure to press the bell icon so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching. Take care. Use a 12mm. Also want to be on good terms with the neighbours. Sexy glasses.